Good evening, everybody. This is the January 3rd, 2019 Planning Commission. My name is Travis Ney. I'm the chair for the one more meeting. Woohoo! Over on my left, we have Scott Woodbury, we have Maren Patterson, Phil Markham, and then over on my right, we have Lisa Milkevich, Sue Wilson, and Ned Hacker. And then from staff, we've got Jared Hall and Zach Smallwood, Jim McNulty, and then Bryant Farnsworth from the law firm or law offices. How do we say that? Attorney's offices. Sorry. Yeah. Of the Murray Corporation. Yes, absolutely. Okay. He is our advocate. We have kind of a light agenda this evening. Item number 1 on our agenda is going to be approval of the minutes from the December 6, 2018 meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those?
Yes.
Other than the textual changes, any additions or changes?
Nope. No.
No. Okay. I'll entertain a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from
December
December
6th.
6th
He should.
with the minor adjustments that we discussed in pre-meeting.
All right. I have a motion by Mr. Hacker. Do I have a second?
I'd like to second that motion.
A second by Ms. Milkevich. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. All right. Item number 2, conflicts of interest. Anybody have any conflicts of interest with agenda items this evening?
No. Nope.
Okay. Item number 3 is the approval of the findings of fact. We have 3 findings of fact this evening. We have Ramos seeking a conditional use for a commercial preschool at the property address 1220 East Vine Street. We have Paris RV seeking a conditional use for a pole sign with an electronic message center at the property address 5545 South State Street. And then Brighton Homes seeking a conditional use for rental townhome development at the property address 4878 South Murray Boulevard. Has everybody had an opportunity to review those?
Yes. Yes.
Any changes or modifications?
No.
Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the conditional use permits for Andrea Ramos accessory dwelling unit, the Paris RV LED sign, and the conditional use permit for River Park Commons rental townhomes.
Okay, can I clarify? You said Andrea Ramos for a AUD? I have it as a-
ADU.
I'm sorry, I have it as,
I have
CUP.
accessory dwelling unit.
I think it's a CUP.
I thought it was commercial childcare, yeah.
Okay, my
Yeah,
good catch.
CUP.
Okay. So it's a
Okay.
conditional use permit.
Okay,
That's
okay. So I have a motion by Mr. Markham. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Woodbury. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Before we get into items number 4 and 5, a little bit of housekeeping. If you have cell phones, we just ask that you silence your cell phones, please. If you are here to speak on an agenda item this evening, we will open up that public comment. And when we do, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you're here to speak for a group of individuals, we'll give you 5 minutes. And yeah, that's it. So item number 4 is Jefferson Place, seeking a 2 flag lot subdivision at the properties addressed 6571 and 6575 South Jefferson Street. Is the applicant here this evening? Have you up in just a moment, sir. Mr. Hall.
Thank you. So as you said, this is the addresses for the properties that are in question for the subdivision are 6575 and 6571 South Jefferson Street. There are 2 existing properties in play. Both have an existing home. In the potential subdivision, these homes and structures would be removed, and these structures would be removed, but this home would stay, and the subdivision lines would be drawn around them to keep that home as it exists. You have Jefferson Street here. This is in the R18 zone. All of our single-family zones in the city allow flag lot subdivision if you can meet certain requirements. So we've been checking the subdivision that's proposed for those requirements. Just to go over a couple of those as we look at the site plan that's proposed here. All lots in Murray, new residential lots, have to be created with frontage to a public street. In this case, that public street is Jefferson Street. There are the 2 existing lots, as I mentioned, the 2 existing homes. They're planning to do the 38-foot wide drive access that would be shared to the 2 back lots to provide access from those 2 lots to Jefferson Street. That's 38 feet wide, so 30 feet of asphalt and then 4 feet of landscaping on each side. That's the requirement there. The rear lots under flag lot subdivision need to be at least 125% of the requirement. This is R18 zoning, as we said, so we need 10,000 square feet. They've been able to do that. The front lots are both large enough to accommodate homes. There is a little bit of, the lots are a little narrow. My finger's not working anymore. Lots are a little narrow, 75 feet wide. in the R18 zone, you need 80 feet for frontage width requirements. They actually went to the hearing officer to get a variance for that 75-foot width. That variance was granted, so we moved forward with the flag lot subdivision knowing that. Again, this existing home, I want to show you just on the next slide here. That existing home will stay, and the other two, as you can see, they've made some adjustments to get the 25-foot rear yard that's needed. The existing structure here may have to go. The structures on the proposed lots 1 and lot 4 will all be removed to make way for new residences to be built. Topography and grading and drainage plans, utility plans were all required by the engineer. They have come in, that's what you're seeing here. They haven't been reviewed and approved yet, but he's in the process of doing that. So that's one of the conditions of approval that you'll see at the end of the slides. Just to be perfectly clear on this last one, this is the grading and drainage plan, but it'll serve to show you this. We mentioned that Jefferson Street is the public road where these lots have frontage, where all 4 of them will have frontage because the existing 2 lots are already physically fronting that road. And then you have the access easements coming across those lots to the rear lots. You see immediately behind there John David Lane. So there's initially Mr. Barr, the applicant, approached us about subdividing these lots and having them have access out onto John David Lane. We are not allowed under current ordinances in Murray City to subdivide property on private lanes. So that would have represented a subdivision on a private road. We couldn't do that, so we went through the process of variance and flag lot subdivision instead. Just wanted to make that clear because it looks a little odd seeing that road in back and wondering why we're draining out to Jefferson for all of that. Just a couple of shots of the property to make sure you can understand that. This is the house on the north end that would be removed. You can see the house on the south that will remain for the time being. The driveway that's there will form, a lot of that driveway will be used in that 30 feet when this house is removed to gain access to the rear lots, and this is the home that will stay. Just a shot from the air looking east above Jefferson. This is Jefferson Street here, and the areas of the lots that will become new proposed lots 3 and 4 back here. We are recommending approval. We feel like it meets the conditions that are required for flag lot subdivision. So we're recommending that the Planning Commission recommend approval for prelim and final of this flag lot subdivision to the mayor's office and forward that recommendation with the 8 conditions as you see listed. Again, the first condition is engineering, and it contains a bunch of sub-conditions. Those are all the kind of standard things that we have to see done with subdivision. One of them that I wanted to point out, and we did in the work session, but just for the community to know as well, we are requiring the installation of sidewalk. There's good curb and gutter on Jefferson Street, but there is no sidewalk. The engineer feels like things are starting to turn over in that area. As we get new development and new things happening, we might get that chance to install that sidewalk. We'd like to have something to match to, so we're asking for that as part of the subdivision improvements. Any questions for staff at this point?
Questions for staff? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And if we could have the applicant come up, and we'll just have you state your name and address for the record, please.
Edward Claridge. I'm representing Sean Barr. Live at 10160 South Roseboro Road, Sandy, Utah. I'm an engineer. We do agree with all of the proposals that the city has recommended, so we'll apply with all of those.
Okay.
And we're just ready to move ahead.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Any questions? No? Looks like
Pretty standard.
no questions for now, so we'll have you take a seat. As I mentioned earlier, this is public hearing, so if anyone would like to speak to this issue, we just ask that you come up and state your name and address for the record. Good evening.
Hey, good evening, Blake Hammer, 120 West Lester Avenue. I'm adjacent to one of the houses. What consideration has been given to the current property owners and the loss of their property, and for one of them, the structure too?
We'll probably have the applicant actually address that. I know that it's said that in the home that will remain, that it is the aunt of the property owner that will remain in that home. And then for the property owner, I believe, is the one that's initiated for lot number 1 and is planning on rebuilding. That's our understanding. The applicant may be able to provide more information.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, because it is a public meeting, we'll have you answer it on the record. So we'll give it just a minute, though, in case anybody else from the public wants to speak. Okay, seeing none, we'll close. Oh, go ahead, sir. Good evening.
How you doing? Casey Johnson, 6545 South Jefferson Street. With one lot, on lot one, it looks like, what's the consideration of it being a historical house? Is there something in place because of the removement of that, it being over 50 years old?
We'll have staff address that one for you. You're welcome.
Hi.
Good evening.
Hammer, 120 West Leicester, wife over there. I guess my question is really for him. I'm trying to find out how it's going to impact me. Is it going to be like a huge towering house that I look back and see? Is it a single level home? Am I going to have like years of dust flying into my home for the development of all of it? Am I going to be able to have opportunity or first dibs, if you will, to purchase one of the new homes if I were interested in doing that? How does all that stuff work? I'm just ignorant neighbor.
Okay, we'll talk about that here in just a moment. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing on this one. We'll probably, as far as historical properties are concerned, in order to qualify for that, the city really doesn't have a formal process in place. So just because the building is over 50 years old doesn't make it a historical property. There are a couple of historic districts in the city, but there is a very rigorous process that goes in place in order to have a structure declared a historical structure. And it's a very long, drawn-out process to get it in place. So for that, as far as what the building can actually look like, they're limited to the standards of the R18 zone. So I think the typical home can be 30 feet tall, 35 feet tall. They are allowed to build up to that 35 feet. They have to use the normal setbacks for the property. So they have to, it's 25 feet from the front of the home, 20 feet from the rear of the home, 8 feet on one side, 12 feet on the other side. Anything else that you'd like to add to that, Mr. Hall?
I'll be super quick, I promise. Just to make sure we answer those questions. Great job. As far as the historic stuff goes, it's not protected in terms of you can't demolish the home, but we do, when we do a demolition on a home that's older than 50 years, we notify the History Advisory Board, and they'll send someone out to do, I'm going to get the name of the survey wrong, but they'll ask permission to go and take photos and make sure they document the home's existence if it's going to be removed, if it's not in a protected district. So yes. And then first right of refusal, the question about that's a private thing you'd have to work out. The city doesn't really regulate that in terms of subdivision. If there's a lot that you're interested in, you might be able to procure that, but you'd get it through private means, not us. And I think that's about it. So.
The dust.
Yeah, construction, we do require that dust levels are kept to minimums. There are very strict standards. They have to develop, when they go to build these homes, they'll have to develop what's called a SWIP, and actually they have to do it for the site improvements too. So a SWIP is a stormwater pollution prevention plan, and it also will include a dust mitigation effort. So the dust will be kept down with water trucks if it's building in the summer, and we have strict standards about not tracking dirt and mud out onto the street that turns into dust, etc. Oh yeah, right. So all of these things are covered and as a requirement of the subdivision approval. But then also we have what's called a pre-construction meeting with the engineers and the builders and everybody, so that they go over all those requirements and standards, so that there's no question that the contractors know what they have to do. So you shouldn't have a dust problem. If you do, you call us and we'll jump on it for sure. Anything else that we missed there?
Do we have any information about construction traffic? It's expected to go on and off of Jefferson and
To
not.
come off of Jefferson, yeah. Staging. The good thing is you have room there's room to do some staging on site, because you're dealing with an acre of property. There's probably a home being built at a time, maybe two. When most of the structure is going to be removed except for that existing home, there should be room enough to stage without causing a problem for Jefferson. Good question. Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, bring it back up here for discussion.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, one more, Mr. Hall.
Ed was going to talk about the considerations given to the property owners. It is Sean's property. The first question from the public was about what considerations had been given to property owners for the loss of their land and the structures that were going to be removed, et cetera. It's all Sean's property. I don't know if there's anything else to say about that, but Sean Barr owns it all, and the reason that he's keeping the one home for a while is for his aunt to live in that home for a number of years before that might be removed eventually too. Anything else to say about that? Feel free. That's all I know about it.
Okay, perfect.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we forward a recommendation for preliminary and final flag lot subdivision approval to the mayor for the properties located at 6571 and 6575 South Jefferson Street, subject to the 8 conditions in the report.
All right, I have a motion by Mrs. Patterson to forward a recommendation for preliminary and final flag lot subdivision approval to the mayor for the properties located at 6571 and 6575 South Jefferson Street, subject to conditions 1 through 8. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Mr. Woodbury. Call for a vote, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, motion carries. All right, item number 5 this evening is Wesley Subdivision Flag Lot, Wesley Subdivision Flag Lot Subdivision at the property address 5165 South Wesley Road. Is that applicant here this evening? Nope, perfect. We'll have you up in just a moment. Mr. Smallwood.
Great. So this property is located, like we mentioned, off Wesley Road. It's just right there on the corner. You can see on the screen there. It's roughly a 2-acre property, and the applicant is proposing to subdivide that into a flag lot subdivision, with each lot being roughly about an acre each. This is in the R18 zone that, like was mentioned previously, does allow flag lot subdivisions. Here you'll see that this property, Jared's really cool and can make this work, and I can't. So anyway, so the southern property is what would be considered the main property, the main parcel, and then that northern parcel would be the flag. As you can see, it doesn't have any frontage right on the street, so that's what makes it the flag. So the driveway there does look a little different than what we typically see. They would be both accessing off Wesley Road there, and it would just split off into access both lots. And there are some easements and protected wetlands in the area, so we are making sure that those are protected. With that, the ditch company has asked that they send over engineering plans to them, and as of yet they haven't received them, so they would like to see those, and that's in your conditions with the engineer comments. So with that, also here's a few photos of the property. Right now it's pretty open. And then last thing I'll mention is that there is a really steep slope. So it goes back quite a bit, and then it slopes down roughly about 30%. So it's really steep in that area. And so the applicants are proposing to build the homes up higher in that more flat area, and leaving the protected wetlands, which is below that slope, to be protected there. So with that, staff is recommending that you forward a recommendation of approval for the subdivision, subject to the 9 conditions. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Can you clarify the location of Tanner Ditch? That is right at the toe of the hill then, correct?
Yes. Tanner Ditch is, I believe, I think it's this guy. Okay. There you go.
So the west property line is Tanner Ditch, and then what we're seeing there is the river course at the toe of the hill.
Right.
Okay. Thanks. Any additional questions for staff? Think you're good?
Okay.
All right. If we could have the applicant come up, we'll just have you state your name and address for the record.
Steve Glazos, 5304 Birch Point Drive, Murray.
Have you had an opportunity to review the 9 conditions?
Pardon?
Have you had an opportunity to review the conditions?
Yeah, I'm fine with all.
You'll be able to comply with those?
Unless you have some questions for me, we're good.
Any additional questions?
Not really, no.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, this is open for public comment, so if anyone would like to speak to this issue, come on up, state your name and address, please.
Norman Anderson, 5157 Wesley Road. I'm the property immediately north
Okay.
of the frontage there. We just have three questions concerned, maybe bleed into fourth. The first thing we notice is that home that on the flag property, it shows that it's up on the high spot, but that drops down pretty quick. So if they're gonna keep it up high, they're gonna have to grade up to make that. Otherwise, they're gonna have to make it a tiered home. And so the question I have is on your 35-foot requirement, is that on the average of the slope, or is that on the high point on that? The other concern is that entryway is on a curve. It's not a sharp curve, it's not a 90-degree, but it's quite a healthy curve. So as you get people coming from both directions, it's going to be kind of an awkward look. And my driveway is right there on the south edge. So the way they've drawn it right now, it's right next to their driveway is right next to the fence, and so that might be a little bit of a concern of them coming out and me coming out, plus people coming around that corner at the same time. So we need to take that into account and make sure that should it be shifted more to the center. I'm not sure why they have it right against the fence when they've got quite a bit of property. I'm not opposed to it. I just expressing that as a concern. Also on our property, I can't remember the term we used. I think we're legal non-conformance because that home does not have the 8-foot clearance that's there. That was from a previous owner from years and years ago. It'd be nice if during this process, if we could accommodate and somehow resolve that, either by us purchasing part of that property that would allow us to then be fully conformant. And that would also cause that driveway to be a little bit further to the south and give a little bit more separation there. Also, as I look at the picture, the northwest corner of the flag home, I'm not sure if that's considered the front, back, or side, but I'm not sure that looks like it's only about 6 to 8 feet. I'm not sure from the property line, so I'd like clarification on that.
Okay, we can have staff reach out on that one. Anybody else?
I'm Max Reese, 977 East 5600 South. I'm the secretary of the Little Cottonwood Tanner Ditch Company. It's our ditch that is running there along the west side and across those driveways and then going on further south. Steve Glazos contacted me last summer and said he wanted to build, and I says bring over the plans, and he contacted me in October and said he was going to build, and I says, well, bring over the engineered plans, and then in November I got a call from Allison Albert at Benchmark, and we talked through what we probably would want there, and the piping, the type of pipe, the size, the sort of where the boxes are, the manholes are, the distance between them, the incoming elevation and the outgoing, and so on. And I expected to get some plans, but I've never gotten plans. So we basically haven't seen anything other than just what we've talked about. And we usually like to try to be cooperative and work on things when they come, but they haven't come our way. There's a little bit of a history on this property for us. In 2011, the same owner, Railsback, we were talking about how we were going to deal with the ditch. He wanted to develop it, and he went in there with a big backhoe cat and ran right over the ditch and broke 2 pipes, knocked the side out of 1 pipe. It's right on the side of a hill. We washed out the whole hill. We told him about it. He said he didn't do it. I mean, you can see the cat tracks going right on the pipe. We had to take our money and our time because people need that water on 48 South, and there was absolutely no cooperation, just denial. We went on, and finally we started litigation, and then we got some sort of reimbursement. But we haven't got a good history with this particular owner, not to mention you can't even find him to give him a summons. So we're going to watch on this one, and we'll try to cooperate, but we need to have things in place. And so far, they haven't been.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public comment. I'll address Tanner Ditch first and just say that one of the conditions states obtain irrigation company approval and pipe the existing irrigation channel through the development. So you will definitely be involved and have a say in this. So that's part of condition number 1, which is most of the engineering standards that we're requiring. As far as the rest, I'll probably actually have staff come up and talk about that. So Mr. Smallwood, I see questions with the grading at 35-foot average versus the high point, the exit on the curve, legal nonconforming of the adjacent property, and then the siting and setbacks of the current or of the proposed building envelope.
Sure. So I'll address the grade or the height first. So the way we calculate it in Murray is by the curb. The height of the curb, so that's where it's calculated. So when a building permit comes in, we will actually go in and look and make sure that those heights are meeting that. So it's not an average or anything like that. It's just based off curb.
Street curb.
For the street curb, that's correct. And then the access easement, it looks funny having it in the middle, having an easement go through and have odd shaped on the other side, so they put it on just on the side property line there. So that there's no real specific reason. That's just the way they decided to put it.
The maximum allowable height of a fence along that section right there would be 4 feet, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
And then
And Zach,
Sure.
for clarification, they're meeting our ordinances, so beyond that, it's up to the builder.
That's
Is that
correct.
right? Okay.
Yes. And then the non-conforming lot to the south, that's something we would have to look into a little bit further. I worry that they wouldn't meet their required width if they were to sell that, because the way we calculate the width of a property is from the setback, 25 feet back, you have to be 80 feet, which it meets that currently. So I worry if we sell a sliver of property off, if that then makes that non-conforming property.
Again, let me address that briefly, and I'll just come to the microphone so it's on public record. Thanks. It would be nice to be able to help that adjacent property owner, but that's a civil matter. That thing just falls off. So we have something that conforms currently for this application. If we take away from it, then we would be adding that non-conforming use to this property, and that presents a problem. So I don't see that this particular property owner would be willing to do that unless there's an excess. But again, lot line adjustments happen all the time because, two original owners may agree by handshake that the wall or fence was built in one place, but then another owner moves in 10 years later and it's 2 feet off, and then there's a problem. Then they want to do a lot line adjustment, but it's a civil matter. Generally, it can be handled between property owners, but there is case law where litigation has to, present itself or resolve the matter case by case. But it is a civil issue that we can't dive down into on that. We have to let them work it out if it's possible.
But there is no problem with their current home. It is a legal non-conforming home, and so
Correct. It existed.
They're
quite
not
some
in
time
any
ago.
jeopardy or.
They are not. They are not. It's just if there was more property here, there could be the potential to help out with that. But I don't see it in this application.
Right.
So. Yeah, is there more questions? I'm sorry.
And then I think the last item was about the building envelope. The plans that you guys are looking at here are just proposed building envelopes. They would still have to meet the required standards, the setbacks and everything. So those are just preliminary. Those might be closer, they may not. From what I think they were measured correctly and that they were outside those, but they would have to meet those regardless. When a building permit comes in, we verify that as well.
So that western corner that we see on that, it would be a side yard.
Yes,
So the closest it could be in this zone would be 8 feet.
8 feet.
that's correct.
And they can always cite the property different however they want.
Exactly,
Yeah. So until there's an actual plan, it's tough to say for certain.
Yes.
Okay.
Did I miss anything?
No, I think we
I don't think so.
I think we covered everything. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, additional comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we forward a recommendation for preliminary and final flag lot subdivision approval to the mayor for the property address 5165 South Wesley Road, subject to conditions 1 through 9.
All right. I have a motion by Mr. Woodbury to forward a recommendation of preliminary and final flag lot subdivision approval to the mayor for the property address 5165 South Wesley Road, subject to conditions 1 through 9. Do I have
I'll second.
And a second by Mr. Markham. Call for a vote, please.
Mr. Woodbury.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Patterson.
Yes.
Ms. McCabe.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Hack.
Yes.
Mr. Knight.
Yes. Motion carries. That is it for our formal agenda. We have anything from staff?
Just briefly to remind you, our next agenda is in 2 weeks. January 17th. I wanted to skip to February already. And we will have elections of chair and vice chair for the year 2019. I just wanted to say 2017. Isn't it crazy? We're almost close to 2020 now. It's crazy. So we will have that. And you saw the agenda came out today. It's kind of back to our standard type of agenda with 9 or 10 items. So tonight was a little blip and was nice, but in 2 weeks we'll have a regular planning commission type of agenda that we have normally seen. And that's all I have to share this evening.
I saw a sign in
Looks
front
like
of Ned's
Jared
house
does.
running for chair.
Is he?
I think so.
When I drove by, it was
Confirm
like,
that he's not.
Motion to adjourn.
Hold on. Mr. Hall has something.
Would you retract your motion for one
Yes,
second?
absolutely.
Real quickly, because you're going to want to know about this. So we didn't have a chance to talk about it in the work session, so I apologize, but we had intended to bring it up there. The automotive places near our offices on 5th West, there were 3 of them. They all had the same condition, the removal of the pedestrian gate and the fence.
Yes.
All right, so far that gate has not been removed, and the property manager doesn't want to remove it. There was some discussion. I had Zach look into it this morning again to re-listen to the conversation so we could make sure we're not falling afoul of what you guys intended and what you wanted to do. He doesn't want to remove it. Now he's saying, well, then I'll just ask for vehicular access all the way through. I'll just remove the fence and put a road through. I'll put my access to my property on Cherry Street as well. If he does that, there was a discussion among the planning commissioners at those meetings, at the first meeting in particular, about what that would mean. Normally that's a site plan review. That would be an administrative thing. We would just do that. And that would be the case. If he does that, he's going to have to improve all that property frontage on Cherry Street that right now is kind of
Derelict.
Thank you. I was going to say cruddy. Derelict is a nicer word.
Good word.
It would have landscaping that has to be installed. They couldn't store they have a bunch of junk cars stored there. They'd have to remove all of those. I don't think he realizes that yet, but that hasn't sunk in. But if he does want to do the access there instead and go through site plan approval, what I want to ask you guys is, would you view that as a modification of that condition that you put in place to try to mitigate the impact of people parking those cars that are waiting for service all over Cherry Street, enough to where you would want to see it instead of us just reviewing it? Would you want to see that back in front of the commission? That kind of, not back to you, but rather the site plan change that would be the vehicular access out to Cherry Street. Normally that would just be a staff thing. Would you want that to be staff, or do you want that to come back to you? That's the question.
I think it was a big enough concern that I'd like to see it.
yeah, me
You
too.
can easily do that, because what we do is then say, look, normally this would just be a site plan approval with staff, but the site plan approval or the site plan change you're trying to make modifies a significant condition that was mitigating an impact, so you got to go see them about it.
Because if you remember, the purpose of taking that fence out is so that
they
cars
couldn't
couldn't
access
park
those
there.
cars.
So because they'd have to walk all the way around. Now by putting that road in, you're going to have more cars parked there. And yes, we may get some improvements, but you'll have more cars.
I'd like to give the property owners on Cherry Street a chance to address
Yep,
this
me
again.
too.
Because
Agreed.
we
Well,
told
look,
them
it's
something
not-
about this, and now it could potentially change.
We just wanted, with that small change, I just wanted to make sure that you're all on the same page with us. That we'll bring it back to you if they want to go forward with it. You'll see it as a site plan approval.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's going to get rid of storage yard, right? I mean, that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Now, motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
We're out of here.